Hello YouTube, Adrian here back in Adrian's Tech Base. Today we'll be taking a look at 2009 budget gamer's choice, the HD5770. The specific version we have here is made by Asus. Released to the public at $159 MSRP, it proved to be a decent choice at the time. Based on Terascale chip though, has not stood the test of time in a great shape, but I'm sure we'll be able to have some fun with it regardless. Made on 40nm node, we're looking at 800 stream processors, 40 texture mapping units and 16 ROPs. The GPU core clocks in at 850 MHz, and to support it we have 1GB of GDDR5 memory running at 1200 MHz over a 128-bit bus. To power this beast we need a 6-pin power connector with cards TDP being 108 watts. On paper, it's not that bad, however, as mentioned, it is Terascale, meaning we get all the drivers and just DX11 support. It does suck because even Fermi got super basic DX12 support in an update. Today we'll be skipping overclocking again. This is despite the core happily taking over 900 MHz, we didn't have a lot of temperature headroom. Even with the brand new thermal paste we were peaking at above 90 degrees Celsius stock, this was just not comfortable for me to push it further as we had to have some coil whine as well. Therefore we are going to look at stock results only. Once again, testing is going to be performed on my PC rig, consisting of i5 8600, 32 gigs of RAM running at 2666 MHz and a Gigabyte B360M motherboard. I was able to cop myself a new SSD though, so we are expanding our game benchmarks. Joining those will be Fortnite and Minecraft. As per usual, we are starting with Euro Truck Simulator 2. We were finally able to enjoy the game, I would say, running at 1080p medium preset, which renders the game at 75% scale. We achieved 38 FPS average with 25 FPS 1% low and 18 FPS 0.1% low. This is actually decent enough to play this, I would say, and you can always drop down the settings a bit to get even better performance. Hopping over to Skyrim leaves us a bit confused, I would say. With 1080p high settings, the average would suggest a good experience with 44 FPS average, but our lows do kind of mess things up with 18 FPS and 11 FPS for 1% and 0.1% low respectively, indicating status. But we do have some leeway with settings, so these can be dropped for more consistent results. Next up we have Civilization 6. This produced a really good number in my opinion. With 1080p lowest settings we have a 40 FPS average and 30 FPS 1% low. This is of course using the canned graphics benchmark. The early game would probably be a lot better than that. CS2 then is on the verge of playability. Using 720p resolution and lowest settings, we were able to afford disabling FSR. With this we got a 53 FPS average and 28 FPS 1% low. Of course it's not ideal, but it's not that bad to skip it outright. Assetto Corsa is once again not happy with our card, applying a 30 FPS lock when it feels like it, for example during recording. We used 1080p lowest settings, which got us 75 FPS average and also 54 FPS 1% low and 28 FPS 0.1% low. We could afford higher settings of course, but I think fluidity we have here is worth more than the bit better visuals. Also with this performance we could easily load some mods and have a decent time with a wheel. It's really not that far from playability in Witcher 3 either. The only thing holding us back is visual clarity, but that of course is going to be a preference thing more than anything else. Using 1024 by 768 resolution and low preset we got average of 34 FPS, 13 FPS for 1% low and 6 FPS for 0.1% low indicates some stutter, but it's actually not that bad in-game as figures would suggest. GTA 5 Legacy is a blast on this card. We used 1080p low settings and achieved great 44 FPS average with 1% low at 35 and 0.1% low at 22. This is great and would easily be good enough to beat the game and have some decent time with it. Fortnite wasn't bad either. Using 720p resolution and performance renderer, we've gotten around 52 FPS average, and our 1% low was at 35 and 0.1% at 18. I was able to successfully play a couple of games like this and hadn't seen any problems. Of course, it wasn't super fluid, but if we think about it, this is a very cheap card, and delivering such a result I think is acceptable for it. Rounding this up is a certified classic, Minecraft. Using 1080p resolution with fancy settings and 12 chunks render distance, we have 72 FPS average. There is 30 FPS for 1% low and 11 FPS for 0.1% low, although those are mostly from the starters when you get loading new chunks. Then in our synthetic benchmarks we started with Unigine Heaven. 1080p Ultra we have 436 points, which is not great but also not that bad. Lastly, we have 3D Mark's Firestrike scoring a respectable 1782 points in the graphics score. Since we are starting to approach usable territory with the performance of these GPUs, I wanted to give it a spin in a daily use. It had no problems with web browsing, and even watching YouTube was possible in 4K 60. Although we were dropping some frames, you wouldn't be able to tell that without the prompt. All in all, I think it's a great showing if we consider this was the mid-range GPU from 16 years ago. Definitely it's not something I would put in my main PC, but it is serviceable. For example, if your card broke and you're waiting for a new one, or for a retro PC build, seeing as those GPUs have great compatibility with older titles and are fully supported under Windows XP. So thank you for your time here today. This was a quick look at HD5770 in 2025. So I do appreciate you listening to my yapping. Goodbye.